Well, welcome everyone. Hi, thank you for joining me today for the first InnoVint Academy session on harvest topics as we lead up to harvest here. My name is Ariane Rizzo. I'm the Client Success Manager with InnoVint. We're joined by a handful of other InnoVint team members today, so maybe they'll say hi. And including members of our client success team that will be here to support us throughout this hour and answer some of the questions you may have along the way, or just to sort of be that support for everyone. Let's see. Oh, we still have a few more people joining. Okay, that's great. Let's head on to next slide. So today we're going to be covering pre-fermentation topics, or pre-inoculation topics, I guess is a way to think about it. Primarily the process around receiving and processing fruit in InnoVint. And so, as I said, today we're covering kind of pre-fermentation, preparing for harvest, preparing your InnoVint account for harvest, receiving and processing fruit. We'll do the presentation, followed by the Q&A. I also want to mention while we're here, right at the start, that our next session on Thursday, August 12th, is going to be covering more of the fermentation tracking activities, so everything after we've received and processed, and a lot of that nitty gritty. So be sure to join us for both. Everyone that does join us for both will be entered for a chance to win a harvest care package for your entire team. It's filled with lots of goodies, things that you're going to want and need right when you need them most, when you're tired, when you're working long hours, and we're looking forward to handing that out. So come to both these sessions and have that opportunity. We're excited for that. Okay, so let's head on to the next slide here. Just to highlight our agenda for today, we can cover so much. I'm going to keep it really tight and simple as much as I can. We're going to talk about updating your harvest and weight tag settings. We're going to talk about entering and tracking vineyard analysis, how to schedule your fruit receiving in InnoVint, how to process the fruit into your fermenter, and then monitoring your fruit intake report and the information you can glean from that report. And I'm just checking my agenda as well. As we navigate through the system, I will be sure to point out many of the updates that we've made since last harvest. There's a lot of exciting things and changes, and in particular around work orders and your sort of quality of life around work orders and our submission options. So I will definitely dig into those once we head into the system. All right, and so with all of that said, let's head into InnoVint now. I'm actually going to turn off my camera for this portion just to make it really easier to see and focus. And again, if you have any questions, send them to the Q&A. We will address them at the end. And if my team can address any during, they'll be sure to do that. All right, there we go. So I am now in our InnoVint Academy account in InnoVint. Hopefully you all can see this well. Of course, let me know if you can't. First thing I want to point out is one of the big changes since last harvest. We are in the winery dashboard, and that is your dashboard icon in your left-hand navigation bar. And there are a lot of great widgets here that kind of keep you up to date on your InnoVint information. But I would say maybe even more so than the rest of the year, there's some that are really valuable during harvest to point out. So of course we always have our work orders widgets, but come harvest now you can look forward to seeing how much weight do you have in inventory, how many fermenting lots do you have going on right now, and things like tank availability and barrel availability. These can be great widgets just to give you that sort of frontline view and kind of check in and keep tabs on the season. So be mindful of this. And I also think the announcement widget is really helpful during harvest. If you kind of show your team that this dashboard is here, then you can certainly, make announcements throughout the day. hey, there's food in the break room, or that truck is coming early, or whatever it may be. Feel free to communicate here. And if everyone knows that they can come here and check in, then that tool is there for them. The other thing I want to point out is this title bar at the top here. This is new, and it's been kind of breaking habits a little bit. We've all been so used to clicking into the lot explorer, clicking into a lot, and then clicking record action. But now we have this option on every page. You don't have to go through that path anymore. So the record action button is here, or the option to create a work order is here. And we also have winery search. So if you're trying to pull up that lot code or tank code quickly, use the search bar. You don't have to go click into Lot Explorer, Vessel Explorer, and do the search there. So just a reminder that these new features are here, and these are pretty exciting. All right, so with that, let's actually get started on some of our harvest-specific content. And this first part is really specifically for those who have admin capabilities. So if you're an administrator in your account, you have the ability to update all the settings. And so we're going to start off in settings. And to do that, come over to your left-hand navigation, down to settings in the lower left. And we're going to look at harvest and weigh tag settings. So let me click on harvest. The first thing I want to point out is you have two options for harvest settings. You have the what we call the advanced receive fruit system and the simple receive fruit system. If you're new to InnoVint, you are going to have the simple receive fruit turned on. This is the default. Everyone sort of starts with this. If that's the case, you should have a blue button down here that says enable advanced receive fruit. And it's your choice if you'd like to enable that and turn that on. The great benefits of the advanced receive fruit system are that InnoVint will automatically generate weigh tags for you. So we will generate the weigh tag, we'll generate the number that goes with it, and you'll have a downloadable PDF of your weigh tag. That's what the advanced receive fruit system is really all about. The simple system is simply you would go through receiving fruit and put in your total net weight, but you wouldn't necessarily put in all those individual weights that you might get at the scale that would be on your weigh tag. So that weigh tag would be managed outside InnoVint. So I already have advanced receive fruit enabled, and so I do not have that enable button. I already have it turned on, just so you know what that looks like. And one thing I want to note in particular, it's another improvement from last harvest, is for those accounts that if you set up your winery with us using the unit of liters for volume, and you're using US tons or imperial tons as your weight unit, previously you were not able to use the advanced receive fruit system and generate weigh tags, and now you can. So we've made that switch. So again, for those accounts using liters in particular who were not able to use weigh tags before, now you can. So you can go ahead and try that. If you have any questions, please reach out to our support team and we can help you through that. All right, so once we have this enabled, the next step is to go over to our weigh tag settings. And so if you just enabled advanced receive fruit, you're going to have a lot of red text here telling you to fill out all these fields. If you've had this on since last vintage, then we just need to make some updates. And the primary one, the main one, is to make sure that we update our starting weigh tag number for the vintage. So I like to start my weigh tag numbers with an indicator of the vintage. So I had 2020. Now I simply want to edit that and put 21 and know that now when I create my first weigh tag of the vintage, I'm going to start with the right number. Perfect. Then you'll come in, you put in your weighmaster, which is typically the winery name, your weighing location, which is the address, and then anyone that you're tasking with leading the weigh scale, essentially, or recording the weights, right? So being your deputy weighmaster, you can have multiple, just use this add button. And if you have someone who's in here from last year, they were seasonal, you can archive them here. This person's name does show up with the weigh tag and weighing event, which is why it's important to specify who they are. And then finally down here for our weight tags, we have our tare containers. And so you want to go ahead and put in all the tare weights of your, I'd say your common bins. What bins do you own and store? And in what combinations do you typically weigh them? So do you typically weigh one bin at a time, two bins, maybe three bins? You know, are we talking about macro 48s or macro 28s or macro, I'm having trouble remembering 16A. You know, there's so many options. Are they slotted? Are they not? You know what all of your bin options are. And you want to be sure to put in those tare weights in here in the combinations that you would use them in. So right now I have a macro bin 28, a 2-bin tare. So it's 94 pounds per bin. But if I were to attach this tare to a weight tag, it would of course multiply this by 2 for my tare. Let's go ahead and add one more. I'd like to have a single bin tare for myself. And so you put in the name, your tare weight, and your default number of containers for this container name, and create container. And now I'll be able to use these tare containers when I'm receiving my weight groups. Okay, excellent. So before I leave settings, let's head back to Harvest for just a moment. What I did not point out before was actually this bottom section. This is all about expected yields. For addition calculations, InnoVint defaults to a calculation of 150 gallons per ton. If you have varieties that you know always come in differently than this, they always come in higher or lower, maybe it's your Viognier, your Malbec, so whatever it may be, and you would like InnoVint to account for your estimated yield based on those varietals in the addition actions, go ahead and add that varietal to this list. It's as simple as selecting it and setting the value. So maybe it's you're lower, maybe it's 125, and go ahead and hit save. And now if I bring in Viognier, for example, and I'm recording an addition, InnoVint will use this estimated yield to help calculate the addition. And again, of course, you can always use our calculated amount or set your own. Okay, and so you can have as many as you need to here, and just be mindful of that. Again, before I leave settings, I just want to point out a few other things that I'll mention at the end, but just to kind of call them out as you're preparing your InnoVint account for Harvest, is all the things that you can set up that are in here. You know, go ahead and add your new team members. Go ahead and add your seasonal employees. Make sure to come into member permissions and add those. We talked about this in previous Academy sessions. Lock backdating, which means locking InnoVint activity as of a certain date, so you don't accidentally backdate and update your TTB report when you don't mean to. So before harvest activity comes, maybe it'd be good to set this date for end of July or end of August, something like that. And then dip charts. Dip charts is a new feature. You can now enter your tank charts or dip charts, kind of whatever you might call them in your winery, set those up, and then when you're recording activity in InnoVint, you will be able to put in your dip measurement and call that volume forward. And I'll show you that in just a little bit. We have a great article about this in our support center to learn how to set those up. But I think this will be great for harvest, and especially for seller interns, seller team, as they're, so that take a little bit of that human error where they don't have to calculate a dip themselves. Okay, so that was the whole section on settings. Thank you for bearing with me there. Next, let's move on to actually entering your vineyard maturity analysis. This is actually something we've looked at in previous Academy sessions as well, but just to kind of call it back to your attention now, especially when you may be using it more heavily, is you can track your year-over-year analysis on vineyard blocks when they reach pick maturity in InnoVint. And to do that, you simply head over to Vineyards, Vineyard Explorer, select the vineyard. So I'm going to do a Mockingbird Vista. and record action and record analysis. And so I will select the analysis. I will select my block that I want to record the analysis against, the vintage. So again, this tracks year over year, right? So if you have 2020 data in there for this block, if you have 2019 data, all of a sudden, every year you'll be able to start seeing, kind of your trends and analysis and when you were reaching maturity, what time. Set those, sort of see that picking, pattern, if you will. Source in-house. This is actually newish as well. We used to say not specified was the only option, and for many of you, I hope that in-house was a very exciting turn of events. But of course, if it's ETS or another source, you can select those as well. And then finally, we add our analysis. So I'm going to use a panel. I'll use my vineyard maturity panel. Of course, you can add other analysis types. If you want to track, berry weight, cluster weight. We have so many options in this list. You should be able to find just about anything you're looking for. And if you can't, let us know, and we'll look into adding it to the list for you. And of course, many of you have seen this before, but just as a reminder, to save a new analysis panel, you would add analysis to your list here and then save analysis list as a panel. And that's how you do that. Okay, so let me put in my values. And be mindful, I work in software now, so I apologize if these values are not exactly as you would expect, but hopefully they're pretty close. So I've put in my vineyard analysis. Now I can go ahead and backdate my action, of course, if this was analysis from a previous state, or I can go ahead and record it for today. If you're inputting several block analyses back to back, go ahead and record and add another vineyard analysis, and that will just reload this page for you so you can keep inputting future values. All right, so I've recorded that, and now I can even scroll down on my block, and see that recent analysis, or come up here and go into my analysis tab and see previous analysis. That's just for this vineyard, of course. I think it's great to be able to pull all this into one report, though, and so to do that, I recommend pulling a custom vineyard report. You can do that in reporting. It's at the bottom of the listing here. Or if we come over to vineyards and our vineyard dashboard, you can create a custom vineyard report right here with this create new button. I already have one created called Great Maturity. I'll click in here. And just to sort of remind you of what you can see in a custom report. I have my list of vineyards by block, varietal, I have my result. I can change my filters, show my changes from 2020 to 2021, update the analysis types, and update how many results I want to see, the most recent 1, 2, or 3 results. So just to be a reminder about these custom analysis reports, this is great for vineyard, great maturity tracking. All right, so once you have made the call to pick, I think the next step, of course, is to schedule that fruit to come in. And in InnoVint, we do that via work order. But with that, I also want to say, I know that every winery runs differently, and some use solely work orders for absolutely everything, and some of you don't use work orders at all, and you only do you record direct actions up here, or you do a mix of both. And so I just want to point out, I'm going to be doing a combination of both in this presentation, simply to show you a few different paths to get to the same place. But please adapt to your workflows as it makes sense. So I'm going to head on over to a work order that I already created. Head into work orders. And actually, before I click into this, I just want to point out, setting up templates for harvest is such, I think, a key part of being prepared and being able to quickly and efficiently navigate through the system, through the season. So I highly recommend creating some templates for yourself. I have one here for receive and process fruit to wait. It has the tasks and SOP instructions in it that I know I already need. You could have these for a variety of your workflows. And I just recommend definitely, if you're using work orders, to set up those templates for sure. The primary reason, of course, I'm using a work order now is because it schedules the fruit for me. So using the work orders gives you the ability to schedule versus creating on the fly. And because it's scheduled, it means I can now see it coming in various places in InnoVint. So I can either go find my work order in my work order explorer, where I am now, but I could also go see it in the calendar. And you'll see I have a lot of my work orders here. Many of you know, if you need to change the due date, it's as simple as grabbing and dragging and dropping. That's one option. Or clicking and opening the work order and editing the work order due date. Those are always options. But the calendar is a great view. In particular, the harvest calendar is a great view, especially if you are sort of looking ahead, planning your week and seeing, all right, how much fruit am I bringing in? Here we've broken it down for you by what vineyard is coming from, what time do we think it's coming in, how much is it, what varietal, and sort of total sum up your days for you so you can kind of have a sense of what kind of load you're going to have on the crush pad around the presses. And we show you green is already submitted, so this is fruit we've already received. Whereas blue, these are scheduled work orders. All right, I hope that makes sense. The last place that I really want to come to and highlight for looking at your scheduled fruit work orders is under Vineyards and Harvest Launchpad. The Harvest Launchpad it's a view in InnoVint that is specifically designed for your crush team, or maybe not your crush team, but your sort of like your scale team or your receiving team to work from, if you will. And it's formatted to look and work really great, especially from a tablet. So if out at the weigh scale, they have a tablet or a little laptop or something like that, and they're logged in on the web browser version of InnoVint, they can get this breakdown of fruit coming in, and it's not muddled with sort of all your other work orders and all the things that maybe that team member is not concerned with, right? They're really focused on receiving. And so every work order that I see in this list has a receive fruit action in the work order. That's what puts it in this list. So scheduling that receive fruit is really what you need. What I'm looking at here is, of course, I could see today I'm expecting 6 tons of red, 2 tons of white. This is the approximate time that I'm expecting each, and sort of the breakdown of the fruit, including the lot code and the expected tons. And then over here to the right, we can see of course, your work order if it's in progress or if it's still open, and they can click right in and get into the work order. I also want to point out, if your crush crew is out there and you get that fruit that you just did not expect to show up, and that unscheduled bit shows up and there's not a pre-written work order for it, they have the option right here to receive unscheduled fruit and get it entered into the system as well. And this works just like the direct action version of receive fruit, but we have it here for them in this view, just to really call it out and make sure that they know that they have that. Okay, so with that said, let's go ahead and dive into a work order and get it filled out. So I'm going to open up this work order for my Fruit Lot 21 Academy Zin. And actually, let me just say I have it open already, just in case. And let's just go through this top down, and I'll point out some new features along the way. So first of all, of course, you want to come in and start your task. I have this work order set up with 3 tasks. I have receive fruit. Let me collapse that. And then we have the processed fruit to weight. So to essentially move that fruit from whole cluster to being processed and into my fermenter. That's what this action will be for. And then finally have an addition task for SO2 at the crusher, or SO2 during processing. Okay, so let's start back up here at the top. I will start my task. If the time of arrival changed, you can always update that here. But this will also be set by the date here is set by the work order due date, and the time of arrival is ultimately updated by when you set the task to be completed. If I scroll down a bit, these are the details of my work order, or sorry, of my weigh tag. So we have our deputy weighmaster. You can change it if it should be someone else. Put in your truck license, your trailer license if that's relevant, and then any notes that you want to be printed on the weigh tag. So this is kind of important, right? We have our notes up here that are always on every action that are really more so of your instructions or steps for your team. But you could also put notes here that will specifically print on your weigh tag. So if those are needed for your vineyard or your driver or something like that, you want to be sure to put that information in this notes section. Okay, scrolling down, this is really kind of the meat of the situation here. I created this work order saying that I'm receiving fruit on this fruit lot code. I see some questions coming in about fruit lots too, and I will talk about those a little bit more towards the end in terms of creating those and getting those set up. But I chose this fruit lot code. This is what I'm receiving on. If I've received from this vineyard block previously in InnoVint, I also have some historical data here available for me to reference. So that's a cool thing too. The more you receive and manage these vineyard blocks in InnoVint, the more data we build for you that you can look back on. Next, this is really, it's helpful for everyone, but maybe even more specifically for those that fill out the California Grape Crush Report. You can input a sugar reading here along with your weighing event. If you don't have this available when you're filling out the work order, this can always come back and be added after. So that's good to know. So I can just come in here, put in bricks, report that analysis, and that can always be edited again or added after the fact. And so I had my expected weight to receive of 3 tons from whoever created my work order for me. And now I want to say how much I actually received. And for that, I use this weigh group section and add weigh group. That's what you want to click. So essentially our first bins that get put on the scale, that's our first weigh group. So I click that, and now I select from my tare container options. I did not refresh this page since I created that other tare bin, and so that's why we're only seeing the 2 bin one here. But I know that I created that 1 bin tare if needed as well. Let's go ahead and select this. So a 2 bin tare, and then let's say our total weight for that 2 bins, our total gross was about 2,200. And then I would save that weigh group if that were all I received, or I can click save and add another and now put in the second weigh group. I can update my tare container choice if needed. I'm going to stick with 2 bins again, and we've got just a little bit less this time. And then save and add my 3rd weigh group. Now maybe my 3rd weigh group is in a different bin. Maybe it's not even one of my normal bins that I've created a tare for already. You can always put in a custom tare. So you kind of get that random bin from the vineyard, from your neighbor, from whoever. I know I've ended up with bins belonging to other wineries before, and you kind of end up calling them, you're like, what do you tare this at? And you get that. You can put in that custom tare here. So just be mindful of that option. It's always there if you don't have that tare bin created in advance. And let's say this custom tare is 80 and my gross is 990. And then I can save that weight group. Okay, so now I've put in all of my weights. I'm looking at a total net of 2.442 tons. And so I'm summing everything up for you down here across your gross, tare, and net. And essentially now I'm ready to complete this task in this work order. Completed the weighing event. Other things that I think are really important to note. If you receive fruit that maybe is not looking as expected, or there's something that you really want to call out about it, just remember you can always add a note with a photo, add a photo note, and record that picture or image of that fruit with this weigh event, with this receive fruit action. I always recommend that. I think that's a great idea, and it's a great way to look back and really have a record of what happened. So adding a photo note, that's one tip. Another is, once I click complete task and download weigh tag, I'm sort of locking in this weigh tag. InnoVint's going to assign it a number, and it's going to be generated and download for you right away. If for any reason you think that these weights are not fully solidified or that they may need editing for some reason, and you have the ability to wait, I would wait and get that update. Make the edits to your weight groups, and then complete and download this weigh tag. And the reason being is once I complete this and generate that number, any edits I make in the future will void this weigh tag number and generate a new number for you. So just in terms of like error correction and kind of thinking ahead, I think that's important to know. All right, that said though, I am done with this task, so I am going to complete that. And there I got my starting weigh tag number and my weigh tag downloaded for me. Let's head on to the next task. So they're processed fruit to weight. And so we've received the fruit, we've brought it in, and now we need to essentially process it through to our fermenter. We get this question a lot, what do I use processed fruit to weight for, as opposed to our other action called processed fruit to volume. And processed fruit to weight really is primarily for your red lots, but really it's for any lot that you're going to ferment on skins or track as tons during fermentation. So if you plan to track it as tons, then you want to use the processed fruit to weight task. And if you plan to process it and track it as volume, ideally you're pressing it right when you receive it, then you want to use that processed fruit to volume task, that other option that we have. So just to call that out, especially for those who are new to the system and just learning this lingo for the first time. Okay, so I'm going to start my task. And when whoever created this work order for me created it, they said, leave 0 tons unprocessed. So I'm processing all of it. If for whatever reason I weren't and I were leaving a ton behind, or I was processing a ton into a different lot, then you could say, leave 1 ton here, and we would process the rest. But I'm going to go ahead and leave 0 unprocessed. And you can see I've called down my tonnage here from above, my previous task, so I know how much I'm processing. And then I want to come down, there may be some steps in here that the work order creator put in. In this case, they said, hey, prepare additions per the next task, so per my addition task, and be sure to distribute those evenly across the bins during processing. So I know I have to sort of reference my next task and maybe get my SO2 ready and to utilize during the processing or crushing event. And then they said process to, and they selected a lot code for me. So 21 Academy's in, and they chose tank 6, and so I'm going to stick with that. During the work order creation process, it's the same as any other process where whoever's creating it can select the vessel or say let seller choose vessels. And so either of those options could be here. In this case, they selected it for me. I'm going to go ahead and put in my full tonnage. So 2.442. Yep, perfect. and complete this task. And then the next thing I just want to look at or call out to you, this is an optional idea that you can utilize in your workflow. If you're adding SO2 during processing and you want to be sure to track that, we don't track we don't track additions against the fruit lot. So the fruit that was received before it was processed, we track it against the processed juice lot. And so you would need to record this addition. Let me start this. I'll add my batch. And then make sure to put in how much to add or apply the calculated amount. And this applies to tank 6. So it's putting it here with this lot code in tank 6, but we know we put in our instructions that we're doing this during processing. So this is kind of the way that InnoVint applies it. We have to apply it to the lot in some vessel. And so we have, we're putting it here for recording purposes, just so you could track that this SO2 is used and added to this lot. But be mindful, you just want to be really extra clear in your instructions if you're including this. This could also be something that if you don't want to assign it to seller team, you could always come in and record this addition action after the fact as an admin, just to record that SO2 happened on that juice lot during processing. I hope that makes sense. Okay, I'm going to complete this task. And now I just want to talk about some of the huge quality of life improvements that we've made since last harvest surrounding work orders. The big one is actually down here at the bottom. So where I have submit work order, I also have this little drop down. And if I click it, I get 3 options. So I can submit tasks as of now, and that's my default. This default is set in your settings. So if you want to update it to a different default, you can go ahead and do that over here. I can also submit tasks as of a specific date and time. This is what allows you to backdate this work order. So if this happened really late last night, you simply weren't here to review and submit it, and you need to do it the next morning, you want to be sure to submit tasks as of a specific date and time, and that'll open up the date and time options for you. Or you can submit tasks as of time of task completion. So if your seller was really good about starting and stopping these in real time, and you want to make sure they submit in that order according to those times, you can use this option as well. So be mindful of these. These are huge. Another one is, if I expand this top receive fruit task, we now have what we call individual task submit. So we have 3 tasks on this work order. But if the first one, if this receive fruit happened yesterday and the rest happened today, I want to be able to submit just this receive fruit task for yesterday. Now that exists. So all you need to do is click submit task, and we open up the same options for you, except now they only apply to this task. So I want to go ahead and submit this one as a specific date and time and make this yesterday. It was kind of late. It's 11:30 p.m. And so I can do that and submit that task independent, and then the rest of these tasks will still be unsubmitted until you submit the work order according to whatever other these instructions, or you can submit each of these tasks individually if needed. Related, if you click or choose a submit task as of time of task completion, but they just they didn't complete it at quite the right time, we have this option in task history here to edit the completed date. So you can see when it was started and completed, and if you click edit completed date, you can now change the date and time of completion. Again, if needed, if you're really sort of submitting these things in a tight timeline and you make sure everything falls in order properly, these are really critical tools for you. And then finally, we have a lot more transparency now. We have this work order history, and so that you can see, especially if you're passing the work order maybe around between different people, you can see kind of who was involved when and what they did, just again to have more transparency. All right, that was a lot. Thank you so much for bearing with me through this work order. I want to move on next, just quickly to the idea of the process fruit to volume action. So I'm going to leave the work order idea now. I'm going to move on to recording a direct action. And if you need to record a process fruit to volume, mostly for your whites and reds, you would, of course, first receive fruit. Bring in that fruit. I have already done that. And now that I have, let me go show you where I can find that fruit that I've already received. So what you want to do, again, if you're kind of doing this outside work order and you're doing maybe a direct action version, you can come over to Vineyards, Vineyard Explorer. I'm going to leave my changes behind. You can come into Fruit Lot Explorer up at the top here, and this is where you're going to find all your fruit lot codes that you've created already, either from within an action or that you created ahead of time. You can always add your fruit lot codes here just to set them up and create them in advance. I definitely know some wineries that do that, and they find that it just makes their flow more efficient during the season if they've made all these codes ahead of time. So that's an option. Or if you simply receive fruit but haven't processed it yet and you don't know where that went, you would come here to the Fruit Lot Explorer, find that fruit lot code with the tons that have already been received into it. Now we can process this. And just be mindful of filters that are set up here. We have this pre-selected to the 2021 vintage. Okay, so I have clicked on that fruit lot code, and I can see that I've received fruit previously, just about 2 tons. And now I just want to record action and process fruit to volume. And once I'm in here, and the other reason I want to show this is because this is very similar to what it will look like when you're creating the work order for the process fruit to weight action too. And I know I didn't show that, so this is another way to sort of illuminate that. So I process fruit to volume, and it's pre-selected the lot code for me and how many tons are in it. And I can say I want to process all the tons, or I want to process just a portion, process one, and leave the rest remaining. Again, this process fruit to volume action is really like your press action. So if you are pressing just this lot, just this 1 ton into a lot code, that's great. If you received maybe 2 fruit lots and you're pressing them together, I want to be sure to point that out. All you would need to do to press them together is keep this here and then go ahead and select lots in picker and select that other fruit lot that you've already received fruit on. And then you have them both lined up in the table here, and you could say how much you're processing from each. And that would press them together into the lot codes that we create below. So just a concept in case that is a workflow that makes sense for anyone. Let's go ahead and process everything. Leave 0 remaining. You put in any of your press steps. I should call out as well. I'm so sorry. I have so much to say, you guys. Thank you for bearing with me. If you bring in a white fruit or red fruit and you are letting it sit on skins in the cold room for a little bit before you press, you can either put those notes or instructions in this process fruit to volume action, either in the notes or in the process steps that happened, or you could always record scroll down to the bottom, a custom action ahead of this with the details of that, essentially that cold sitting period or cold holding period, so that you know that happened and that's recorded on the history of this lot, and then record your process fruit to volume. Okay, and then finally, down here at the bottom is where we say what we're pressing into. And you can detail your press fractions. So maybe you're doing a light press into tank. And then you can add a lot. Maybe you're doing a hard press, into drums or something. And you can set up the lot codes per each. When we say create juice wine lot, what it's going to do is when you click create lot, it's going to copy all the details of your fruit lot code for you. So this makes it pretty quick and simple. And just be mindful that's kind of what happens. Let me go ahead and do this, add this new lot. Versus if I were to combine with the existing lot, that's what you would do when you've maybe created the lot code in advance, or if you're pressing into a lot that already has volume and you're simply adding to it. It's always an option. All right, and now let's see what, I'll show you what happens when we select the vessels to fill with this light press. I'm going to go ahead and select tank, do tank 1. And because I have dip charts or dip charts set up for this tank in my settings, I can either put in my ending fill or I can put in my dry measurement in inches. So this one came out to 36, about 300 gallons, a pretty close conversion. We'll see down here, we give you your yield. So pretty close to 150 gallons per ton before I've even split out my hard press. So I would follow the same methodology here and put in my hard press details, what vessel I fill, and again, your dip if needed. All right, we're running a little tight on time, so I am going to move on from the processed fruit to volume action. Thank you so much for sitting through that, and I hope you learned something there. And actually, I'm so sorry, one more thing I really want to point out is, and this maybe is even particularly helpful with white lots, or if maybe if you're doing Chardonnays, if you are planning to split up the fermentation into, if you're putting it in 2 different vessels to begin with, maybe 2 different barrels or 2 different groups of barrels, and they're going to be inoculated with different yeasts, or one's going to be native and one's going to be inoculated, whatever it may be, I highly encourage you to split that up into different lot codes from the beginning. So when you press this, if I'm going to do 2 different ferments and I know they'll track differently, I would definitely put a portion into one lot code here, and I would add a lot and create another lot for the other portion. And that's just a way to kind of help track those separately from the beginning, and then it'll make your fermentation tracking smoother in InnoVint. Definitely reach out if you have questions about that. Just wanted to throw that in there. All right, and then a final note about, for those who are tracking TTB compliance, I want to mention that, kind of what happens when you record that receive fruit action and you bring in fruit for the first time. Those uncrushed pounds are going to go to part 4 on page 2 of the form. And then once you do either of the process actions and you record these, and it puts the fruit into your fermenter, that's when we populate part 7 of the report, again on page 2, which is your estimated quantity in fermenters. And we don't move it to declared on the front until we go through some other steps that we will definitely walk through in one of the future Academy sessions. So I just wanted to call that out for anyone kind of tracking that. I will say, if you receive fruit regularly that you intend to sell or ship, there's some alternate workflows with those, and we will post some guides about that in our support center, so you can find those. Again, if you kind of sell or ship fruit or undeclared juice, we'll give you some options if needed. All right, and then lastly, while we're in InnoVint, let's just look at how you can keep track of your incoming fruit or find your weigh tags. So to do that, you want to come over to reporting. I'm going to abandon this action. And your fruit intake report right here. And I personally love this report. I find it very useful. I used to run a winery, and I would open this report constantly just to kind of get my total tons. Where was I in the season? How much had I received from one vineyard versus another? I knew I was expecting, X amount more tons from one. And so if I filtered to my Mockingbird and I had, about 5 tons, but I know I'm expecting 10, I know I have about 5 to go. It just kind of really helped me keep track. And if you have custom crush permissions turned on, you can filter this by owner tag and really see how much fruit you brought in per owner versus what you're expecting or based on or what they told you. So I just love this report for those reasons. I also would point out, if you have, again, if you're doing the California Grape Crush report, that bricks that you recorded in that receive fruit action will populate here. So you can export all this at the end of the season and use that for that report. And then if you want to pull up your weigh tags, you can download all your weigh tags right from here as well if you're using the advanced receive fruit option. All right, and so with all that said, let me head back to our presentation for a moment. And again, I tried to point out as many of these as I could. I think one I didn't was the set barrel color to make barrel selection easier. It's now an attribute of barrels when you're adding barrels to the system, where you can set it to red, white, I think rosé or NA possibly. And that might help make your selections easier when you're filtering your barrel pickers. Again, later in the season, but just wanted to call that out. And then I wanted to point out, what else can you do to prepare for harvest in InnoVint? One, we have a pre-harvest checklist in the support center. I'll take you to that in a moment. I highly recommend going through that. There's a lot more information in there and a couple of great things to dive into. The other thing you can do is really just make sure that all of your inventory is cleaned up and brought up to current before you really get busy with harvest. It'll make data entry so much easier if all of your older vintage lots are sort of set up with their correct volume, if they're in the correct vessels. Make any of those updates before you get busy. Add all your new barrels to the system before you get busy. Add any new vineyard blocks you're working with, and then update any additives on hand. If you've received new additives, be sure to bring those in. That will just make it so smooth, and just a great thing you can do in advance. Similarly, as we already mentioned, if it works for you, if you don't foresee a lot of changes to the fruit that you're expecting, you can enter all those fruit lot codes in advance from the Vineyard Explorer and then that Fruit Lot Explorer tab at the top. If these integrations are helpful to you in your workflow, remember, InnoVint has an integration with ETS where you can create the sample label from InnoVint and the results will load automatically into your system, saving time for your lab team. If you utilize TankNet, we can talk to them and update your tank temperatures, and even if you use the bricks option, update that in real time. And then cost tracking your cost of goods from the point of grape receiving through to bottle. This is a great feature to add on to help your accounting teams really see how costs flow through from day one of fruit being in your system. And then we talked about it already. Make sure to add all those new winery members, your cellar interns. Make sure their accounts are set up in advance. If you, I know many people use a generic email, cellar innovint.us with whatever capability they want. That's acceptable. You just want to have that set up and ready to share with them. And then if you need to add any new bonds to your account, email us to set up those new bonds. We're happy to put those in for you. Okay, how can you empower your team to learn and use InnoVint, especially new users? I think the big thing is to, of course, send them to these academy sessions. We'd love to have them. I think there's so much value to be had from just seeing someone else navigate around the system and see all the different places that you can click and little hidden features that might exist. So the academy is a great tool. Make sure they know how to access the support center. I'll show you that now. And where to find new product updates and new releases that can stay up to speed. So let's actually head over real quick back to InnoVint. And if you click on the question mark in the upper right, it may be a gift box if you haven't clicked it yet, and then click Go to InnoVint Support Center. We'll take you right here. This is actually a brand new support center. No login required anymore, so it's very easy to get in and use, easier to search. Utilize this resource and make sure your team knows about this resource is what I would say. And some cool tips in here are software release notes. Anytime we make a big update or a small update or improvement, we're documenting it here for you, so you can come read up on what's changed and learn how to use whatever's new. Of course, you can always go back and find old InnoVint Academy sessions here. And then Harvest. This is your one-stop shop for Harvest related how-tos. So stop into Harvest. And once in here, that's where you'll find that 2021 pre-harvest checklist that you can utilize as well to make sure you've kind of just got yourself set up. All right. So with that said, of course, lastly, I would always say, make sure the team has those mobile devices and tablets and things that they can utilize to take InnoVint with them on the go. That will certainly make things easier and more digitally friendly. So let's head into Q&A. I know that a lot of questions have been coming through, and I think many have been answered by my team. Thank you for keeping up with that. I'm going to turn on my camera for just a minute so I can connect with you all again. Hello, and let me see what questions are still here that the team thought I could answer live for you. So, see from Andrew, what is the status of the updated app with offline usage? My scale is in a Wi-Fi weak spot. From time to time, it will lose signal and then lose all weights entered. Oh, that's so awful. Fortunately, I double enter and still handwrite a weigh tag as well. It would be nice to have offline functionality on weigh tags. Okay, so great question. There's a new mobile experience coming. I was going to mention it sort of at the end here. We're going to have more information about it at the August 12th Academy. We're heading into sort of beta testing time with it. But some of the great functionality you can expect is of course offline mode. This is huge. So you can use it in different parts of your cellar or in the vineyard where you have low Wi-Fi, and then what you enter will come back and be loaded once you're in Wi-Fi. The other thing is it will work on iOS, Android, and actually any mobile device. It's not limited. So these are some of the really exciting things coming. Andrew, I will just sort of lay it out straight. I'm not certain if we're going to have the weigh tag functionality right at the beginning. Again, new app, kind of in beta, and we're testing a lot. But I believe 100% you can expect that by next harvest. And we'll learn a little bit more again in these coming weeks as that app starts to roll out, and we'll see what's available by our August 12th Academy. Hopefully we'll talk about it a little bit more then. So thank you for that question. And then I also see, and Paul, I hope that answered your question as well. And from Mara, can we input MOG weight after processing to get adjusted versus net tons before expected gallon yield? Okay, that's a good question. So can we input MOG weight after? Wouldn't necessarily put in MOG weight. You can do it like as a note on the action just to have that record. What we would actually do is you can adjust your weight received using what's called the fruit weight adjustment action on the fruit lot, and or you can update the expected yield. I think that's probably the better way to go. Update the expected yield on the juice lot itself. Let me see real quick if I have a lot that's sort of in a place where I could show you that. I'm not totally sure if I do. No, okay. I don't have one right now. We will follow up with you with some additional steps to make sure you see how to update that expected yield on a juice lot. Essentially, you would click on a lot itself, and there'd be an option to update expected yield up here when your lot is tracked in tons. I don't have any tonnage sitting in my lots right now, unfortunately. Okay, and Andrew says, yes, thanks, all good. And you've been beta testing the app. That's wonderful. Thank you for that. I appreciate that feedback. Anyone else, actually, I'm just going to point out while we're here in the support center, if you are interested in keeping up with what's available for beta testing, we now have a feedback and beta programs. section as well. And you can submit yourself to be a part of testing and help us make the product that you want. All right. Just closing notes. It seems like we've sort of wrapped up questions. Just again, come back and join us on Thursday, August 12th to learn about fermentation tracking, all that super wonderful nitty-gritty that you're going to need to know once you inoculate. And remember, just come to both sessions. You're entered for a chance to win that Harvest Care package. We're really excited to give that out. And Andrew, here we go. Next time we'll have more information to share about the new mobile experience, and we're very excited about that. So thank you, everyone. Thanks for your time. We really appreciate it. And we will see you again soon. Cheers.